see here, the protesters have gathered here, and even we have learned that. Police have, after the situation completely went out of control, police has opened fire on the protesters.
These are the visuals we are showing you, the exclusive visuals of Danapur railway station, where the offices have been burned down.
Protester Damodar from the Warangal district, who came here for the for the protest. Actually, he died undergoing treatment at the Gandhi hospital.
और आप देख सकते हैं कि किस तरह से यहाँ पर धुएं और आग का गुबार फैला हुआ है, और अब भी यहाँ पर प्रोटेस्टर्स हैं जो दोबारा आ रहे हैं और उनको भगाया जा रहा है।
अंदर आए और वो अंदर की तस्वीर आपको हम दिखाते हैं। ट्रेन के अंदर किस तरह से जो शीशे हैं वो देखिए, पूरे शीशे बिखरे हुए हैं। जो पैसेंजर्स होगा, आप अनुमान लगाइए कि जो पैसेंजर इस ट्रेन में चढ़े होंगे उनको कितना नुकसान हुआ होगा, क्योंकि पत्थर मारकर शीशे को इस तरह से तोड़ा गया है।
So we can say that the situation is completely out of control here in the Secunderabad railway station.
हम लोग सिर्फ 4 साल के लिए आर्मी में क्यों जाए? हम लोग को तैयारी करने में लगभग 3 साल लगता है।
So this is what we saw in different parts of the country today, viewers. Good evening. You're watching the Urban Debate with me, Heena Gambhir, on Mirror Now. It was day 3 of the agitation against NDA government's Agnipath scheme. Today, trains were torched. You just saw the visuals. Roads were blocked as protests spread to more states in the country. Secunderabad in Telangana, Samastipur in Bihar, Kolkata in West Bengal, Balia in Uttar Pradesh, Kota in Rajasthan, Aligarh in Uttar Pradesh, Sasaram in Bihar. Chaos prevailed on the streets. Unidentified individuals resorted to vandalism, pelted stones and torched public vehicles. Protests intensified so much that at some places even the cops were not spared and were attacked by the mob. In Secunderabad, the mob vandalized a railway station. At Lakhisarai in Bihar, trains were torched. At Balia in Uttar Pradesh, shops were damaged. In Begusarai, a train track was set on fire. In Patna, explosion was reported at the station. In Madhubani, the BJP office was vandalized. The situation in Darbhanga was no different. In Darbhanga, the protesters did not even spare school children who got stuck in their school bus. Small children panicked in the bus and were left in tears. And those were the touching visuals that we got today. Let's get those visuals on the screen for our viewers. Just look at these visuals. Here you can see small children inside a bus, and this school bus was stopped because protests were happening around this area. The children panicked and they were left in tears. Over 35 trains have been cancelled, and the railway minister has also appealed to the people to not damage trains because this is eventually going to impact public only. Government says this is a golden opportunity for the youth to be able to serve the country. Opposition says the scheme is a mockery of training and will demotivate the soldiers. And there is now a demand for rollback. Here on Urban Debate, you will get all sides of the story. Who are these protesters? Are these protests spontaneous? And what will it take to douse this fire? Before I go across to my guests and begin this urban debate for the evening, I want to go across to my colleagues who've been tracking the story very, very closely throughout the day today, who've been bringing to us live updates from different parts of the country. We have my colleagues Priyank joining us this evening, Gurpreet, Adarsh, as well as Aditya. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Priyank, I want to come to you first. Tell us exactly where you are, what you saw today, And who are these protesters really? Are these protests spontaneous?
That because the pattern was very similar to what happened, earlier in the day, because the protest started from Betia, one of the portion of Ara, and then it shifted gradually towards the state capital of Patna, where the protest ended in a very, horrific manner at Danapur Junction. They were certainly targeting this rail route, which connects the northeastern part of the country to other part of the country, because Danapur is one of the prominent railway junctions. And from there, the biggest railway junction is Mughal Sarai, from where all the other trains get diverted and they move towards different portions of the country. So the students, all those protesters, whosoever they were, because the manner in which they have protested, it was certainly not showing that they could be preparing for the defense services, because the kind of discipline which you have in the services was actually not seen on the ground. So we cannot say that all of them were the aspirants who were about to appear before the defense services exam. So they started targeting this particular railroad, which connects the northeastern part of the country to other states, to be very precise, so that the message should go loud and clear. They came up to the railway station with a very clear motive that they have to do vandalism. That's why the CCTV cameras were broken. They were moved, and they started targeting those trains which were either going towards the Hyderabad side, or the trains which were going towards Delhi side. So the message was loud and clear that they wanted to give a clear-cut indication to the center that if you make a move which is against our will, those property or those individuals who can go and get the message loud and clear to the headquarters of the country will be targeted.
Okay, Priyank, requesting you to stay on with us. Priyank reporting from Chapra in Bihar. Let me go across to my colleague Somit as well, joining us on the broadcast this evening. Somit, good evening. Tell us exactly where you are and what did you see during the day today. Do you see any signs of de-escalation, or do you think it's just going to get worse?
Well, actually, first of all, I'd like to show you the somewhat the normal situation here, because we are right now standing at the Secunderabad railway station, the biggest railway station in South Central Railway, we can say, also the biggest railway station in both the Telugu states. And here now the situation has come to standstill. However, after 9-10 hours of complete arson and the negotiations, finally police taken the accused into the custody. We can see here the train has just now arrived. Now the passengers are being allowed to enter into the railway station, the platform. So now I'll also tell you one more clearly. We have exposed a few posters, few WhatsApp statuses, where we can say that actually, it was really well planned.
Okay, I think there is some problem with the connection out there. We'll try and reconnect with Somit in just a bit. But Somit was giving us a sense that right now in Secunderabad, there is uneasy calm that is prevailing. But he's also telling us that protests seem to be well planned, at least in Secunderabad. This is the indication that we've got so far. Let me go across to my colleague Gurpreet as well, who's joining us live on the broadcast from Chandigarh. Gurpreet, good evening. How was the situation where you are right now?
We can see in Haryana a lot of violent protests has been happening. Yesterday we have seen there was a lot of violence in Palwal, and after that we have seen some protests had been taken place in the Rewari. If we can talk about today also, the police was forced to even use section 144. They have imposed in a various districts, whether it's Tajil, Bhiwani, and even Balabgarh, that near Faridabad. So all the districts and local administration had already imposed section 144. At the same time, if we can talk about the government side, we have seen very strong statement has come from the Home Minister of Haryana, Anil Vijay, says that those people who are indulging in violence, they will not be spared at any cost. But if we can talk about this protest which is happening, we have seen that there are a lot of politics is also being played behind the curtain. Also, a lot of seen the Congress party and specifically Randeep Surjewala, who belongs to this state and he has just elected as a Rajya Sabha member. He has also said that it seems that the government is playing with youth, and that was another provocation by the opposition party, and that's why these all the protests have been escalated in the state. But yes, of course, Section 144 have already been imposed, and at the same time, services of internet have been shut down in specific districts where the inputs are coming from the intelligence. What is the situation at the ground? So let's see how the government is going to tackle. But yes, of course, the protests are happening in the various districts of Haryana.
Right. Gurpreet, stay on with us. Let me now go across to my colleague Adarsh as well, joining us live from Lucknow this evening. Adarsh, good evening. आप हमें बताइए उत्तर प्रदेश के तमाम हिस्सों में किस तरह से प्रोटेस्ट आज देखे गए और आपको क्या लगता है कहीं कुछ साइंस नजर आ रहे हैं प्रोटेस्ट के कम होने के या आने वाले दिनों में चीजें खराब होती हुई नजर आ रही हैं?
प्रदेश की बात करें तो देश का सबसे बड़ा राज्य माना जाता है और इसमें भी प्रोटेस्ट की शुरुआत जो है वो बिहार से सटे हुए जिले बलिया से शुरू हुई है। बलिया में भी ट्रेन हवाले किया गया है। छोट-पुट प्रोटेस्ट जो है वो कुछ एक जिलों में देखने को मिले हैं, चाहे हम इधर के वेस्टर्न यूपी के जिलों की बात करें या फिर जो मध्य यूपी है उसकी बात करें। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी बात जो है कि अभी कुछ देर पहले ही हमने एक व्हाट्सएप चैट एक्सेस की है जिसमें कानपुर में बाइकॉट टीओडी के नाम से एक ग्रुप चलाया जा रहा है और उस ग्रुप में ना सिर्फ हिंसा को लेकर प्लानिंग की जा रही है बल्कि इसके साथ साथ पुलिस चौकी को फूंकने तक की बात कही जा रही है। ये व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप जो है उसमें कुछ युवा लड़के जुड़े हुए हैं जिसमें ये सड़क को जाम करने से लेकर पुलिस चौकी को फूंकने और बस में आग लगाने तक की बात करते हैं। हालांकि इस पूरे मामले की बात की जानकारी सामने आने के बाद पुलिस विभाग के अधिकारियों ने इन लड़कों को ट्रेस करना शुरू किया है। माना जा रहा है कि ये कुछ एक उपद्रवी लड़के हैं जो इस तरीके की हिंसा फैलाने की बात कर रहे थे और इसमें सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि जिन इलाकों में ये लोग इस तरीके की प्लानिंग कर रहे थे कानपुर का वो स्टूडेंट एरिया है, यानी स्टूडेंट एरिया में अगर इस तरीके की कोई हिंसा होती निश्चित तौर पर या तो वो स्टूडेंट उस मॉब के साथ शामिल हो जाते या फिर उस मॉब के साथ टकराते। ऐसे में हिंसा और भी ज्यादा भड़क सकती थी। कुल मिलाकर अगर हम कहें तो बलिया में इसकी शुरुआत हुई है और माना जा रहा है कि अगर समय रहते पुलिस ने ऐसे ही इंटेलिजेंस के आधार पर बाकी लोगों के ऊपर शिकंजा नहीं कसा तो निश्चित तौर पर आने वाले दिनों में इसके और भी परिणाम देखने को मिल सकते हैं।
आदर्श, लेकिन आप हमें ये भी बताइए जो लोग सड़कों पे प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, ये तो आप कुछ एलिमेंट्स की बात कर रहे हैं, कुछ व्हाट्सएप मैसेजेस की बात कर रहे हैं जिसकी जांच अब होगी, लेकिन जो लोग सड़कों पे प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं वो लोग कौन है? क्या ये प्रोटेस्ट जो हुए हैं पिछले 2 से 3 दिनों में स्पॉन्टेनियस है या आपको लगता है कहीं ना कहीं उत्तर प्रदेश में भी बलिया में खास करके ये किसी प्लानिंग का हिस्सा है?
हालांकि इस मामले पर हमने जो यूपी के टॉप कॉप्स हैं उन लोगों से बातचीत की थी। अनाधिकारिक तौर पर उन लोगों ने ये जरूर कहा है कि देखिए इस तरीके की इतनी बड़ी प्लानिंग जो है, इतनी बड़ी संख्या में एक भीड़ को, खासतौर पर युवा भीड़ को इकट्ठा करना एक जगह पे और उसके बाद फिर ऐसी घटनाओं को अंजाम देना जिसमें आग लगाई जा रही है, आगजनी की जा रही है, निश्चित तौर पर एक स्पॉन्टेनियस रिएक्शन तो नहीं हो सकता है। हालांकि आधिकारिक तौर पर किसी भी अधिकारी या किसी भी जो इंटेलिजेंस के अधिकारी हैं उनसे इस बात की जानकारी नहीं मिली है, लेकिन जो अनाधिकारिक तौर पर जानकारी मिल पा रही है उसके मुताबिक कहीं न कहीं इसके पीछे कोई प्लानिंग जरूर है, क्योंकि इतनी बड़ी संख्या में युवाओं को इकट्ठा करके उनको मोबिलाइज करके और फिर एक चीज के लिए उनको आगे लेकर आना निश्चित तौर पर एक प्लानिंग का ही हिस्सा रहा है और उसी को लेकर उन्हीं कड़ियों की तलाश पुलिस भी कर रही है। चूंकि मामला अभी युवाओं के गुस्से का है, ऐसे में तुरंत कोई एक्शन नहीं हो रहा है, लेकिन निश्चित तौर पर इसके पीछे की जो कहानी है, इसके पीछे का जो पूरा जो क्या की जांच पड़ताल है वो जरूर पुलिस लगातार कर रही है।
All right. Adarsh, request you to stay on with us. Let me go across to my colleague Aditya as well, joining us live from Patna this evening. Bihar has been the epicenter since day one as far as this entire issue is concerned because 4 states, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra and Rajasthan account for about 38%, Aditya, of the total strength of armed forces in the country. So definitely there are concerns, there are voices that we have heard from the state of Bihar. But what did you see today? Are the students out on the streets or do you see signs of these protests being pre-planned, by someone in the state of Bihar? What can you tell us?
Well, exactly. As far as the turn of events in Bihar is concerned, and particularly on Friday, that is today, You cannot, nobody can exactly say that the entire protest was actually handled by students only and who were actually the aspirants of getting into the armed forces. But that being said, the way things transpired and the way they have torched trains at multiple different locations, and also they have torched private cars that were actually parked outside on the roads and outside the railway stations as well. So this categorically shows that the element of planning was there. It cannot be just mere coincidence that an entire mob gets irate on the same location at the same time, executing such instances.
Okay, you also sensed an element of planning there. Let me now go back to Somit, who is back with us on the broadcast. Yes, Somit, you were telling us earlier about the situation there. Uneasy calm seems to be prevailing in Secunderabad. What more can you share with us?
See, normally I'll ask my VJ Junaid to show the visuals here, the normal visuals here. Normally, this is how Secunderabad looks like, Secunderabad railway station looks like. The crowd is very high, so now only they have allowed few people here. Only the people who will be boarding the 8:30 train, this is just now, entered into the station. So now only this train has arrived to this station, as South Central Railway CPR has confirmed us that, these operations will begin in roughly in 1 hour. So now this train has arrived at this railway station. So we can say that it is just not a normal protest, we can say, because the arson we have saw, what happened we have saw, and 3 coaches have been completely gutted in fire. 10 trains have been vandalized. This morning we are seeing what's been happening, and I'll also try to show you one video so that it's the viewers can understand better. This is how the conspiracy has been done by the few of the people. We can say not we can't blame all the protesters. This is how the protesters have been called in, and this is how the posts were actually circulated in the groups of the aspirants, we can say.
Right.
And what is this here located? What is here stated? On 17th, indirectly they have stated that on 17th everyone should gather here. So 2,500 crowd, we can say, have gathered at the railway station. They have entered into these premises illegally, forcibly, and they started pelting the stones against the railway police. Railway police was completely outnumbered. Later they have opened the fire. One was also succumbed to the injuries. 13 others received injuries, and even we can say that 3 coaches were torched and 10 have been vandalized. We have also spoken to one of the railway officer who said that
so 10 trains you were telling us were vandalized. There were about 2,500 people who had gathered at Secunderabad railway station. Okay, Somit, stay on with us. Let me also quickly go across to my colleague Nilashish joining us on the broadcast. Nilashish, good evening. You've also been tracking the developments very, very closely. Tell us exactly where you are right now, and is the situation any better? Do you see signs of de-escalation? Who were the people out there protesting where you were?
Well, as far as this situation is concerned, Heena, definitely very similar. Has been saying there is easy-ish calm, we could say. The tension earlier in the day, you have seen which these who were protesting, or rather they were unleashing violence in these areas. So definitely the situation, and what our colleagues have been when moved from one location to another, it seemed very planned approach. We spoke bus drivers whose
Right, I think that's a bad connection out there because it's raining where Nilashish is right now. But Nilashish, thank you for the moment for joining us with all of those details. So viewers, that was a sense of how the situation is on the ground right now. Now, the big question is, what will it take to douse the fire that we are seeing on the streets across India? Because now the protests are spreading to other states as well. Joining us on Urban Debate this evening is Dr. Syed Nasir Hussain, Hussain, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. Maroof Raza, Group Consulting Editor, Times Network, is live with us. Colonel Utkarsh Singh Rathore, retired defence expert, also on the broadcast with us this evening. Colonel DPK Pillai, retired defence expert, also joining us. And we have with us Dr. Dharinder Tayal, BJP leader, on Urban Debate this evening. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Dr. Syed Nasir Hussain, let me begin the discussion with you. 35 trains in total were cancelled. 200 train services were impacted. A school bus with children inside was stopped. Children were seen crying in that particular bus. What really explains what we are seeing on the ground today?
See, I think most of the political parties, including my party, have disassociated themselves from the violent part of the protest. We have condemned it. We said that there cannot be any place for violence in our democratic form of protest. Having said so, I would also like to say that people have been speaking on different television channels. I was there in debates on a couple of channels right before this. Everyone keeps saying that these are not the aspirants. These are not the people who could have got into the army even if they had tried. This is very organized kind of an agitation that is happening. I would like to expand it. There is something more to it. It is not just about this scheme. It is not just about the entry into army. It is also about completely like there's no jobs in the country. 2 years army recruitment was not there. Before that, the Prime Minister of the country had promised 2 crore job each year. 16 crores by now should have been there. Nothing has happened. Now they have announced 10 lakhs. That again, only filling up the vacancies. During COVID, MSME sector, lots of companies, small shops, everything got closed. And we could still it reminds me of all the visuals. People living Ludhiana, people living Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, from my town, from my place, Bangalore, back to the eastern part of the country. No jobs, no compensation for them, no relief for them. So it's all hazy everywhere. There's no future for all these people. Every time you come, every time there is a jumla, every time there is a promise, every time there's a every time there's a hollow slogan, every time there's big talk about so many things happening in the country. But actually nothing is happening. There's inflation all around, rising prices, industrial production, agricultural production, exports falling continuously, economic slowdown. So I think there is frustration in the air.
Right.
There is distress among the youth of the country. There is mistrust everywhere,
okay,
even including the politicians and the government of the day. I think all the this is all the manifestation of what we are seeing today, yesterday, day before yesterday, especially on this Agnipath thing. Now, over and above this, you come out with a scheme and say, see, look here,
okay,
you come and join the army, 6 months you will be trained, 3 years you be there, 3.5 years, after that you go back. See, what is this? You are not promising them anything. They are temporary arrangement. Again, a sort of an contract labor kind of a thing. Forget about the security part aspect of it. Forget about
you made some
training.
2-3 very important points. Let's get BJP to respond to what you are saying.
To fight China. But
Dr. Dharinder Tayal, do the protests also expose the reality of unemployment crisis in the country?
I think, Dr. Sayyed has raised some points, but I think the jumlas are on this side rather on the side where he thought they were. Now, number one, I would talk with data, not generalizations. Generalizations have been given. He has said that the economy is in a terrible shape. What is happening internationally to economy, we all know. At the same time, we are looking at 8% growth of GDP, which is the highest in the world. So unless we have data, we are only talking jumlas. Second, he's talked about the unemployment in the country. I would like to once again give you some data on the unemployment in the country. Unemployment in urban India, which was in the last April, May, June quarter, which was at 12.6%. In the next quarter came down to 9.8, in the next quarter 8.7, and for the just concluded Jan, Feb, March, it was 8.2%. So it has come down from 12.6 to 8.2. So somewhere I think there is, just a jumla being given out rather than actual statistic. I'm giving you statistics. Let me give you another statistic on the, since we were supposed to talk about Agnipath, but since we're talking economy and job creation, so let's take that up first. Or the blue and gray collar jobs. Now, 1.26 million have been created in the month of May alone, which is double of what was in April.
We all have this data, Dr. Dharinder Tayal. So you are now trying to say that this is not really the frustration of youth. All of this that we are seeing on the streets, in different parts of the country is part of some planned conspiracy. If I've understood you correctly, that's what you're trying to say, right?
It is your people who said it. It's your people who said it.
I'm asking you.
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying.
I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
I took an update from my colleagues on the ground. To understand how the situation is. I wanted you to respond to what Dr. Hussain said earlier, and you are giving us data. Eventually, you are also trying to say that these people who are out on the streets vandalizing public property aren't really the army aspirants.
In fact, that is exactly what, Dr. Hussain, since he knew this is what was going to come his way, he tried to
Let me now take this debate a little further and talk about the root cause here. And this is about the Agnipath scheme, which Colonel Pillai, government feels that is a golden opportunity for youth in the country to serve the nation. The process of recruitment is also going to begin very, very soon for Air Force by 24th of June, we are being told. RB Chief has said that notification for this scheme is going to come in the next 2 days. Why do you then see anger on the streets?
Really don't believe the people who are protesting are aspirants to the army. While there was a delay in recruitment because of Corona and other reasons, I don't think anyone who really loves this country. You join the army because you really love to serve the army, and there is a certain commitment towards the ideals of our country, and violence is definitely not one of them. We live in a very democratic setup, and soldiers, they have a certain quality. The calling for serving in the armed forces is very different from. So while I agree that pay does make a matter, pensions do matter, but definitely the kind of people who are attracted toward the army is not the kind of ones who would actually indulge in this kind of violence. And secondly, what are the number of seats at stake? It's about 60,000 annual intake. And what is the recruitable male population that we have between 17 to 21? It's about 20 million. Now, those people who are the 60,000 who are aspiring for this seats are definitely not amongst the rioters. I can tell you, I can assure you. These are people who are definitely not made it. They wouldn't be in that age group at all. And they are not the kinds who would actually go down and burn and hit people, our own citizenry. So I think there is a certain disconnect here, because it's not fair. We have a very democratic country where we had an issue about an age thing. It was addressed, and we have methods for redressal of our grievances, and there are laid out channels. Violence is something that only the state has the prerogative in a democratic setup like ours. When the citizens take to violence and take recourse to this, and others joined in to support them by means, I think the first and foremost, we must shun all these kind of violence that's happening here on public property. Young children, like you said, just imagine tormenting young children. I can't believe it. For me, when I saw a young child shot and I had to choose between my own life and that of a child, I chose that of a child. I don't think these people would even qualify it's disgusting to see this kind of behavior by our people. It's sad, and I really hope that wisdom prevails on them, and people who are inciting them also would realize that the kind of losses. If you read the report that came out yesterday, it says 674 billion worth of public goods have been destroyed in the last year over public rioting. That amounts to about $800 per capita. So I think we must restrain ourselves and understand what is good for our country and our people, and good for ourselves, and take the best.
Okay. Colonel Rathore, How will you like to respond to what we have seen during the day today, what we are seeing since last 2 days in different parts of the country, and the demands that a lot of these protesters are raising? They are raising some basic, concerns. For example, for 4 years, the government is saying you can be a part of the armed forces. What happens after 4 years? Aren't these legitimate concerns?
See, what is happening here after the announcement of Agnipath scheme is really very sad. And these can't be the army aspirants or the youth who are looking for jobs. It is motivated, it has been engineered, and all these places they have been, the fair amount of planning has been done to enact this thing on the streets and other places. The Agnipath scheme as such, I was fearing this backlash because it has been on the anvil for last couple of months. I've been following it very closely. Government has gone wrong, but the youth which has been protesting, it is not so aggrieved. The kind of damage it has done to the army and its organization, they should have been protesting about it. The armed forces, let me qualify this, India is a very fortunate country where you have passionate young people who want to join army as a full-time career. The scheme which has been imported from countries of Europe and Israel, there these youths don't want to go to army. They want to say, okay, you can take us for 3 years, 5 years, then we'll come and pursue our jobs. Here the case is different. They want a full-time career in the army. And if you offer them 4 years, 3 years and call them Agniveer, you call them Superman, they are not impressed. That is what has actually happened. You have handed over a very emotional issue to the opposition to encash it. Similar thing had happened during Kisan Andolan. So this is actually a wrong, you have been caught on the wrong foot. And it was going to happen. That's what has actually happened in this scheme. There was not requirement of the thing. If you said that this contractual period is so good, you should have been enacted in the police, railway, postals, everywhere. Why you started with army? I have not understood why armed forces. Does anybody throw a spanner in a fine-tuned Formula One racing car, which is running so fine? Do you throw a spanner in it? You don't. You don't experiment with army. That's my point is. What is happening, the losses and all this thing, vandalism is going on. This is most unfortunate.
Okay. Very interesting points you have made. You don't really experiment with army. Maroof Raza, you've heard all the sides here. You've heard what the politicians have to say. You've heard what the experts have to say. Where do you stand on what we are seeing in different parts of the country since last 3 days? There are no signs of de-escalation. Clearly, now we can't say that, everybody who's out on the streets protesting is not an aspirant here. Of course, there are rioters, there are people who are trying to take the advantage, but the issues are also very, very important that need to be addressed. Do you think probably not enough consultation happened before the government came out with this sort of a scheme? Is that the reason behind the backlash?
Well, Heena, there are lots of important points, and because of constraints of time, I'm going to stick to bullet points. I like the points, some of the points that Colonel Rathore has raised. I also like the points that Colonel Pillai has raised. I know Colonel Pillai very well, and I share his sentiment. The bottom line being that if you're looking to join a disciplined force like the army, this is not the spectacle that you need to put up in front of the country. Because if this is your mindset, you are going to have a real tough time coping with the military, because once you get into the training establishments of the military, they tell you straight away that we didn't call you in, you came on your own. But now you are with us and we'll make you walk straight. The second point is that Colonel Rathore has raised a very important aspect, which is that why only experiment with the army? Why try and reinvent the wheel when the wheel is running well? You see, please understand that this government has a tendency to throw up these big announcements as surprises, and these lead to very emotional responses. There was mention of the farmers' rally, and after so many months of a standoff, the government backtracked. There was enough time to do a certain amount of engagement with the naysayers and find a middle path. You are saying now, the first step we've already seen after the announcement that the Home Ministry has announced that yes, they could get job opportunities eventually in the Home Ministry. Really? As far as I know, that the police and paramilitary are allergic to having people with a military background. This happened 30, 40 years ago when people came in, but they found it very difficult to engage with the mindset of those who had served in the military and try them and make them similar to the police paramilitary forces who have now over the years developed a different operational role, ethos, etc. So are you guaranteeing that? No. Are you guaranteeing government jobs? No. But let me also give an underlying factor. The army is not a job-giving outfit. It is not a job. It is not just a job. It is more than a job. It is an organization that you sign up knowingly that you might die. You need that kind of a mindset. Are all these 46,000 aspirants willing to die tomorrow, push come shove? I don't think so. Are these 46,000 aspirants going to get pushed around in the military as hard as the earlier recruits were? He may just turn and tell the Subedar that साहब मैं तो 4 साल के लिए आया हूं, आप उनको ट्रेन करो और सताओ जो आपके साथ 15-20 साल के लिए टिके हुए हैं. So where does the senior JSU or the NCO go? It's a very big man management problem, let me tell you. And worse still, they are trying to suddenly homogenize the army when the fighting units of the army, and I have the privilege of having belonged to it, Colonel Pillai also, and I'm sure Colonel Rathore, that we have seen what regional compositions make and what important role they play. You can't just throw in a Charlie who comes from somewhere in South India and tell him you suddenly integrate with Sikh soldiers, or you can't throw in a Khalsa in between Biharis and say you learn their language and their custom and trade. These are issues that need to have been thought through. The single driving force and why this was done in the army and not elsewhere was that the pension bill of the military was going through the roof. It had already touched 1.19 lakh crores. And if we didn't control it, not that this team is going to control it, let me tell you, because the rest of the lot which is there will continue to retire over the next 4 years, and the pension bill will be attributable to them. Lifespans have expanded. Healthcare systems require more money, and therefore the pension bill will go up, but this is no way to address the pension issue. On one side, you give in to one rank, one pension. On the other side, you say we can't afford to pay pensions. But then can you afford to pay for your national security? What is the price you're willing to pay as a nation? Can you afford to pay for a highly, they're saying a tech-savvy military, that's what they want from this force. I would question that technology doesn't come cheap. Maybe manpower even is cheaper, sadly, than technology. So how do you address the problem? The problem is economic. And you're not addressing, I'm not talking of the nation's economy.
Yes.
There are two views. Let me tell you, over the last 10 years, the country's GDP has virtually doubled. That's another healthy sign of the economy. But on the ground, there are no jobs because people are looking for jobs for a variety of reasons. Now, that's a management issue that the politicians have to address. But the issue about the army is that there is a limited amount of budget you have for the military. And if you're going to do cost cutting, this is not the way to do cost cutting. You don't suddenly trim down an
organization. This is not the way to do cost cutting. It probably will not address the pension issue that the government probably has been wanting to address via this Agnipath scheme. So, gentlemen, this question is for each one of you. Whoever wants to come in first can begin. What will it now take to douse the fire that's out there on the streets of this country, where public property is being vandalized? The idea is to send a message to the center, but eventually it's public property which public only uses is being vandalized. Okay, Dr. Dharinder Tayal wants to come in here. Do you think there is a need to probably either tweak the scheme a little further, there is a need to allay the concerns of the people on the ground, or do you think there is a need to roll it back as being demanded by the opposition? Dr. Dharinder Tayal, then Dr. Nasir Hussain. Very quickly.
So I think the government is listening. So to say the government is not listening, the government is listening. Where a genuine concern was raised, the government has increased the age limit so that since the last 2 years people were saying we were not
recruited. But does it not also mean, Dr. Dharinder Tayal, that probably government had not considered all sides of this particular scheme, had not really looked at every aspect of this particular scheme, and that's the reason why, within hours of this big announcement, they increased the upper age limit from 21 to 23. Was the government then unprepared?
So the government has to be listening. The government has to be listening. But at the same time, when we're saying, is the fire going to be doused? Is the fire being set up or is being lit by those people who want to get into the armed forces? Like Maroof said, this army is not a job. I mean, I went to Rashtriya Military College. I'm as much of a Fauji at heart. So the army is not a job. So these are not the people who are there. So at the back of it is the opposition which wants to make political capital out of it. That is the basic problem, that somebody is trying to encash
Dr.
this.
Nasir Hussain, how will you like to respond?
Sorry?
Dr. Nasir Hussain, how will you like to respond to what Mr. Dharinder Tayal is saying?
Take on from.
Yeah, I couldn't hear the
See, no political party is involved in this, and especially I can speak for my party that we have been asking these protesters to stay calm. We have been asking these protesters to protest in a democratic way. Our cadre has not come out and protested till now because we know we don't want to make it a Congress versus BJP kind of a thing in the country, because they try to do every time we come out to protest, this is what BJP does.
But your party is demanding a rollback, if I'm not wrong.
And at what Mr. Maroof Raza, please allow me to speak. I want to just add to what Mr. Maroof Raza was saying. See, you just can't think about cost cutting. This is not the way how you will cut the costs. One. See, especially when China is sitting on our borders, they are provoking us again and again. Pakistan is again getting aggressive. We have unfriendly neighbors because of our faulty diplomacy all these years. Now, during this time, if you think of bringing in untrained Jawans, now especially when there's so much of, look at the defense production, defense intelligence, defense technology, sophisticated weapons, so much of technology involved in it. You can't have a person trained for 3 months, 6 months to handle all these sophisticated weapons. So you are at one side it is about the jobs. Let us keep it aside. What about the security of the nation? You want to cut down the size of the army by 50% after a period of time, and then you want to have 50% of that army which is untrained, ill-equipped, and especially when you train them for a long period of time, that sense of belongingness, that pride of working in the army, that patriotism, that all comes over a period of time. You can't just say you 17 saal ke 18 saal ke bacche ko leke aao and then train for 3 months, 6 months and say they will be our frontline people fighting us on the borders. So there's a great risk of security to our country also involved in this. So we in the Congress have said this has to be rolled back. There should be wider consultations. There are a whole lot of army people, ex-army people, generals, commanders, intelligence officers who have worked in the army for 20, 30, 40 years. Please call them, sit with them, consult with them, have detailed discussion with them, and start this with a
Congress
trial
party
basis.
seeking a rollback of the scheme the way it exists today and begin wider consultations. Quick response, Dr. Dharinder Tayal, then I'll go across to Colonel Pillai.
Yes. Where does this come from that consultations have not happened? The government has very clearly clarified over a number of years. It has been discussed with everybody in the defense ministry, which included the people from the lower to the highest levels. So to say that only somewhere probably the veterans have not been consulted, the consultations have happened in full form. Number one. Number two, the issue which has been repeatedly raised, where was the need? And Dr. Hussain has himself said the technology has advanced, and this is one of the primary objectives that we need to get in technological students or technological youth into the army. Today, when a sports person is said to be 28 that he's fit to retire, he can't take it anymore. The average age we are talking about is 32. The government is trying to lower it to 26. You have to fight at Siachen. You have to fight where you need you need the youth. That is the need. That need is not being understood. That is the problem that is arising today. And what is happening to this youth? We are saying what will happen? They will be demotivated. Imagine there are 100 people and 25 are going to make the next grade. I think all 100 will be super motivated to make it to that 25 and not question the Subedar as to what they're supposed to be doing. So the motivation levels are not going to be low. To think that today we have seen in the government services, the moment a person gets into a government service, his motivation level dips. Here that is not going to happen. So let's understand
Colonel Pillai, Colonel Rathore, then my question is, if indeed there were consultations with all stakeholders, then why did we immediately change? Okay, Dr. Hussain, quick response. Then Colonel Rathore and Colonel Pillai, they've been waiting for quite some time. Very quickly, sir, please finish your point.
See, Dr. Tayal says that all have been consulted. I have been searching for the comments by ex-army men. 95% have spoken against this scheme. I can give you the names and what the kind of comments they have done on this. That's there in public domain. 95% have spoken against this scheme. One. Second, what kind of technological minds you will have at the age of 16 and 17? At least you should be a graduate. What kind of technological mind you will have at the age of 15, 16, 17?
Okay, let the experts respond, because these are very, very technical questions and important for armed forces. Let the experts address these concerns that you have raised. Dr. Hussain, yes. Okay, Colonel Pillai, the question again is about whether proper planning has gone into the scheme or not, because soon after the announcement,
he will be more worried about the future than in fighting on the front line.
The upper age limit for the first year has been increased to 23. Suddenly, the government realized that people who've been preparing for last 2 years, who were waiting for the recruitment process to begin, what will happen to them?
Yeah, that's a good sign that the government has responded to the requirements for those people who couldn't get enrolled because of Corona. So I think it's a good thing. Whereas about this consultations, I'm really not privy to what happened about it. But I want to add here, like we must understand, once the Kargil war had taken place, there was this Kargil Review Committee headed by K. Subramaniam. Then there was a task force. There were 4 subcommittees. One was headed by Arun Singh on defense, in which he very clearly demanded that we need to have a younger profile for the armed forces, also a technologically enabled workforce, because the wars of the future, and which we are seeing now today, what's happened in Azerbaijan and Armenia, or what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, these are all technologically, and you've also seen that during what happened during the war against the ISIS, where people sitting in mainland America were targeting targets in Libya and Syria and other places. So this is an era where technology is going to dictate this thing. So when I joined the army, we had paper maps. We were using compasses, and we had those scales, and which we learned to navigate. Today we have GPSs. So, and today my children, like honorable person before me, he just mentioned that what technology would their children they're capable of handling devices much better than me. They would really handle. So we must understand that the era that we are moving into, it requires a very and one of the things that General Rawat had done is talking about cutting out the division brigade headquarters, division headquarters, because you're on one frame from the sensor to the shooter. If you see today, there's no hierarchy. You send a message on a WhatsApp, it receives your intended audience the same instant. Similarly, what you receive, a satellite moment earlier, we had the luxury of time with us where your intelligence was sifted and analyzed and others. Here today, you have an ability. You have to have quick thinking, quick-witted, and nimble-footed people, young, agile, capable of taking decisions. And that's why I think this idea has to be implemented. How it is to be implemented, what modifications has to go through, whether it's being fair on how are the people going to be selected. Whether we need to have an all-India test where we select the cream de la cream of that age group, and how do we actually distribute them, how do we train them. These are things that are to be worked out, But definitely, there was a change needed in the manner in which we recruit, where we just make them all run, and just put them through a test, which really wasn't getting us the best material what we need for the wars of the future.
One quick comment I would like to make.
What will it take to douse the fire? Dr. Tayal, one second. I'll come back to you. I'll give you time for your closing comments. Colonel Rathore first.
See, this scheme has actually inflamed the passions. Before it gets out of hand, I agree that at the moment, aspirant youths are less involved in it. But if it goes on like this, you would find the actual youth also joining it. That would be a very dangerous sign. So first thing is that the scheme should be put on hold, given a thorough review, and then re-announced. There is no harm in taking the opposition parties into confidence. Now I want to say what it brings to armed forces, this scheme. All this while we have been talking about Agniveers, what they are going to get, for how many years they are on contract, what golden handshake they are going to get, etc., etc. What they are going to give to the army, nobody talks about. Technology savvy, healthy, it is all, these are actually, their business promotion things. Because the human resource stock is the same. 10th class pass youth. We were getting 10th class pass youth. If they were no good, they will not be any good. If they were bright, they were going to be bright. So this is all business promotion activity. You are not going to get people from IIM and IITs. Okay. I would just permit me 2 minutes, quote the Singapore model on this. It's a very small country. It operates on this. Lady, the only difference is that they have done a beautiful homework. The moment they have it for 5 years, the moment person completes 5 years, he gets 3 options to join the civil or corporate. He doesn't have to go and hunt for the job. If my 5 years are completing, it is on the government to give me 3 options. Whether you like to go to join CRPF, BSF, or this corporate is also interested in you. That is how this scheme should have been operated. Okay. That's how it works. And now I come to the moot point of rehabilitation or re-employment of ex-servicemen. This has been a burning question for last 4 decades. These CAPF and PMFs, all these abbreviations you have, they have never ever agreed to take the armed forces persons on a lateral induction basis. Every year, Indian armed forces have been disgorging 66,000 people.
Well, that's a different issue and an important one, Colonel Rathore, that you have raised. But like you mentioned earlier, that scheme needs to be put on hold at least for now. Maroof, Okay, I have very little time left on the debate. I'm going to take the closing comments. Maroof,
Heena,
do you also
Heena?
agree that to douse the fire that we are seeing, you know, on the streets in different parts of the country today, there is a need to put this scheme on hold or maybe tweak it and then, you know, relaunch it?
Hey, Heena, there are 3 or 4 points, and if they are addressed, I think that will douse the fire and that will become beneficial for the services also. Point 1, that don't say that you'll be taking in and only 25% will be retained. All 100% that make the mark, if not at least 90%, and they've gone through the grueling training of the military and the system and they are disciplined, etc., they would be absorbed within the military or sidestepped into the paramilitary or elsewhere. It is no secret that the paramilitary forces are not half as well trained as the army. So they should thank their stars if they get these guys who are going to be well trained, mostly in the infantry regiments or armored corps, and they will be an asset wherever they will go, because 46,000 is not a very large number for the country. Secondly, I like Colonel Rathore's idea, and I was going to suggest the same, that the Singapore model, which means that if you come in for 5 years and then you get benefits for the rest of your life, because once a soldier, always a soldier. And you become absorbed in various governmental organizations. There should be no second think about it. The third point which Colonel Pillai raised was about technology. Let me tell you, technology is a two-way thing. In the Afghanistan and in Ukraine, Russia and the United States, very heavily techno-savvy armies, they've had a bloody nose. Because at the end of the day, the country which will produce soldiers who are willing to fight and die will win the war. You are not going to just ride in Apache helicopters and wave the flag and expect the enemy to relent. So technology is a good thing. And it is not to say that every soldier in the military today is non-techno savvy. He is pretty clued up. He knows how to operate systems. It is a growing relationship once you come in as a 17, 18-year-old, that by the time you become 28 years old or 38 years old, you have learned so much. You learn in the military, you grow, you get bonding, you are educated, your qualifications are improved. So it's a whole relationship that should be offered. So at least people are told that if you make the selection grade, then you have a lifetime of opportunities ahead of you and you'll not be wasted out. Though the idea of giving them 11.71 lakhs in their hand and certain other savings from their 4 years is a substantial sum. How many graduates in the country can step out of college with 12 lakhs or 15 lakhs in their hand?
Yes, but I think if there is some certainty, some amount of certainty about what happens, what are the options after 4 years, maybe that can be an incentive for many people to be able to serve the country. Last quick 10 seconds, Dr. Tayal. I am completely out of time. Please finish your comment in 10 seconds.
Quickly, I'd like to say one point which was raised was regarding the training. Now, I just want to put this point across that the main enemy, China, has the same model where they train for 40 days. We're talking about 6 months, right? So that is one part of the one part of the story, and that is conscription. Here it is all voluntary. The very important point I want to make is that here you're talking about a student who would have otherwise